heaven, our Father in heaven, suggesting it's a realm that's out there somewhere. And soul, we generally think of, as long as it's incarnate soul, we think of it as being in our bodies. It's a disincarnate soul that's out there somewhere as well. And heaven and soul, we think of the soul as inside, heaven is somewhere beyond us in Western thinking, traditionally. But let's use the science of gematria, look at the deeper level of this. You might be surprised at what you're going to see here. This is an image from, somebody asked me recently why I use such a ghostly image. This is the visionary artist Alex Gray. I'm using this with his permission. And this is an amazing image where he is showing the detail of the human body in this world, what the ancients call the 10,000 eyes of the Buddha, the realm beyond this world, and the soul migrating between those two realms. It's an amazing image. It's from his book entitled Sacred Mirrors. If you're familiar, I think you're familiar with the work of Alex Gray. Well, in the Hebrew tradition, the word for soul, and again, in Hebrew, the Hebrew language, the vowels are omitted, so it's consonants only, although I'm showing how the vowels will be pronounced. In Hebrew, the word for soul, nshmh, nshmh. If we assign the very precise numeric value for every one of those letters, N becomes 50, SH, Shen becomes 300, Mem becomes 40, He becomes 5. If you add those numbers together, you get the number 395. In the science of gematria, 395 represents soul. So you could say soul and 395, they're one and the same. Okay, you all right with that? There's an amazing image where and you take the numeric value of one and the numeric value of another, even though the words seem separate, if the numbers are the same, those two things are equal in meaning. And by virtue of that, you have a deeper understanding. For example, let's take an example so you know precisely what I'm talking about. It's the best way to describe this. This is the work of a brilliant rabbi. His name is Benjamin Black. And to the best of my knowledge, he is still with us today. He's still alive. The word heaven and the word soul. In Western traditions, heaven, when we say heaven, people kind of do this. They say, well, you know, in heaven, our Father in heaven, suggesting it's a realm that's out there somewhere. And soul, we generally think of, as long as it's incarnate soul, we think of it as being in our bodies. It's a disincarnate soul that's out there somewhere as well. The heaven and soul, we think of the soul as inside, heaven is somewhere beyond us in Western thinking, traditionally. But let's use the science of gematria, look at the deeper level of this. You might be surprised at what you're going to see here. This is an image from, somebody asked me recently why I use such a ghostly image. This is the visionary artist Alex Gray. I'm using this with his permission. And this is an amazing image where he's showing the detail of the human body in this world, what the ancients called the 10,000 eyes of the Buddha, the realm beyond this world, and the soul migrating between those two realms. It's an amazing image. It's from his book entitled Sacred Mirrors. Well, in the Hebrew tradition, the word for soul, and again, in Hebrew, the Hebrew language, the vowels are omitted, so it's consonants only, although I'm showing how the vowels will be pronounced. In Hebrew, the word for soul, neshama, nshmh. If we assign the very precise numeric value for every one of those letters, N becomes 50, SH, Shen becomes 300, Mem becomes 40, He becomes 5. If you add those numbers together, you get the number 395. In the science of gematria, 395 represents soul. So you could say soul and 395, they're one and the same. Okay, you all right with that? All right, now, in Hebrew, heaven, and to be very precise, I know there's some Hebrew language experts in here, I wanted to be precise. It's actually the heaven. The Hebrew word is ha-shemayim, again, with no vowels in here. Ha is the letter He, numeric values for each of these, 5, 340, 10, and 40. You add those together, the numbers are different. They become the same. But what this says in the science of gematria, what this suggests then is that although we think of heaven as a world out there and soul as a world in here, they're actually the same thing. That heaven and soul are one and the same. But the heaven out there lives inside of us. And that our soul is part of a greater realm. And in that way we have a deeper meaning. Is that an okay example to help understand how the numbers, if you never had the numbers, you still have the words. The numbers are a deeper mystical meaning for both of those. So there's a question, I'm sorry. Although it's not necessary to reduce it, it can be. sense what we've done? Have I done an okay job getting us there? Okay? Because what we can do now, if that table holds, now it's no longer intuitive. We've got numbers to make that link. And those are the only numbers. By the way, atomic mass, those are the only numbers that will link the ancient letters with hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, the letters of God's name. They're the only letters that will work in that way. So if we substitute now, here are the DNA bases. Make every cell in the body are made out of some combination of these bases: hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon. If we take our chart, every place there's a hydrogen, we put a Y, a nitrogen, an H, oxygen, a V, carbon, and there's a G, and here's what we get as the DNA bases. And now we're beginning to look at the cells in our bodies in a very, very different perspective. A very different perspective. I'd like to go through this piece before we take our first bow down. You okay with that? So when you look at the strand of DNA, you'll never look at DNA the same again now. Because rather than seeing the CG and the AT, here's what we get as the DNA bases. And now we're beginning to look at the cells in our body in a very, very different perspective. A very different perspective. I'd like to go through this piece and we'll take our first step. So when you look at the strand of DNA, you'll never look at DNA the same. Carbon, there's a G. Here's what we get as the DNA bases. And now we're beginning to look at the cells in our body in a very, very different perspective. A very different perspective.